My name is Via Williams and welcome back. We missed you guys. We had an awesome week last week, though. Some of us went to Keller Williams Mega Camp and it was incredible. I don't know how you guys feel who attended virtually, but it was probably the best mega camp I've ever attended. I missed everybody. I missed the hugs. I missed the networking, but the content was incredible. And it's up for about 60 days. So for those of you who were not able to see it, and by the way, everybody's invited to that, whether you're with Keller Williams or not. It's for all real estate agents, and don't get caught up in what brokerage brand it is. The content is superb. These are agents that are crushing it right now, who are spilling everything, right? Speaking of which, this is our Wednesday webinar. We do pretty much every Wednesday at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And what we do, guys, is we do this for you, the agents. We do this to give you tactical, practical tips and tricks on how you can improve your business right now. Like, my goal in these webinars is that you get off of them and there's at least 2 or 3 implementable, actionable ideas that you can do immediately and start that day. I love doing high-level mindset stuff. That's like kind of my passion and my joy. These Wednesday webinars are actually not about that, though. They seep in magically. These are about tactical things, right? So we're here every single Wednesday at noon. You can either, register and join us on Zoom, and we broadcast out in Facebook world to the amazing, awesome Pivot Shift Ahead page. I always want to say Shivit page. I always say it wrong. So today I'm really excited to launch a 2.5-part series. Our third episode is kind of half and half, but a 2-part series for sure on real estate farming, and I don't mean with cows. I mean real estate farming, the kind that is marketing farming, the kind where you take a neighborhood or a geographical locale and you target it over time with mailers and do all the stuff, and you create a really large market share for yourself within that geographic area. Actually, I shouldn't say geographic area. It could be a niche too. You could have a niche. One of our agents here in Seattle, Courtney Cooper, farms houseboats, floating homes, and it has a dominant market share, for instance, in that particular product. So most of the time, though, it is geographical zones, and I am so happy that I have my good friend Tiffany Fykes with us today. Tiffany, thank you. I know how busy you are. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy. Love to share.
Hey, is it just me? Do you guys, is her audio low?
Do you need me
or is it just me? Maybe it's my speaker that's low.
I can turn it up a little bit.
It's good. Okay.
Is that better?
Never mind. It's just my end. I don't know why you sound super quiet to me, but it must be my computer. Let me just check. Super.
Y'all can tell me in chat if I'm too quiet. It's lower than the music. Is there still music going on?
No.
Okay, sounds good. We're good.
No. Okay, good. There we go. So Tiffany, you're in Nashville, and I can't wait to dive into your story. Of course, I know your story really well, but these guys don't. So we're gonna play dumb. I'm gonna act like I don't know your story, which is good. I think one of the coolest things about you is you were a documentary film producer before you got into real estate, which I think is super cool because I'm addicted to documentaries.
Yep. I just produce home sales now instead of documentaries.
The other super cool thing about you is you went to UT Austin, University of Texas at Austin, which of course I am very fond of because my son goes there. He's a sophomore there. So that makes me super happy too.
Yeah, I used to sleep on one of the couches in the music building every Wednesday.
Which is, I never knew that. I just learned that about you.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Well, you never know. Live and learn. So you grew up in Texas, you went to UT Austin, and then you guys moved to Nashville in about 2003, right? And you entered the real estate industry in about 2009. And if I'm getting my stats right, within 4 years, you created $1 million producing team, and you doubled the size of your family at the same time. And you have 2 beautiful, wonderful, highly talented boys.
Yep.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. So now you're in Gary Keller's top agent group. You're one of the top agents in the nation. But I want to start at the beginning because your business is really based on a farm. And I know your story. Please tell everybody your story about how much money you had when you started that farm and what it looked like.
Yeah. So I got into real estate in 2009, not by choice, actually. We were in architecture. My husband was a residential architect, and I joined him in his business. And then if you were in the professional world in 2008, 2009, you know that the Great Recession happened, all of our business disappeared, and we basically had to say, okay, what do we do? We had this grand plan of we're going to design houses, we'll build them, and we'll sell them. And we kind of looked around and said, we definitely don't want to build houses because those people are losing their own homes and the ones that they're like building right now. So let's just get into real estate. My husband was the architect, so it just made sense that I would get the real estate license. And I just thought, I will learn this and then I will get better. And then once the market recovers, then I'll be ready to go. So we had been without work for about 9 months. My husband, like, we delivered pizzas and just like did whatever it took to make ends meet while we were trying to figure out what to do and how to professionally work during that time. So when I got into real estate, I actually asked a friend if I could list their house, if I would go get my real estate license, because I didn't even have the money to get into real estate. But I am also a debt-free kind of person. And so I knew I needed to go ahead and know I had a deal so that I could pay and put my stuff on credit card and then pay it back. So when I got into real estate, we were negative in our bank account. We had used our emergency fund. We had no money to invest. But then got into real estate, and I didn't have a lot of bad habits. I had never been in sales. Like I said, I made documentaries. I know how to move things forward and make things happen. That was the skills that I had. I could talk people into things, which ends up, that's sales. But, so I just started going to work. I read MREA, like, in 2009, you'd host an open house.
Millionaire real estate agent, right?
Yes, sorry.
Yep.
Millionaire real estate agent. You'd host open houses and like no one would come because there were no buyers. And so I just read that red book over and over again. I read it, at least 3 times within 6 months. And in there, it talked about, I'm trying to see, I don't have it on my shelf. There you go.
Right here. So that's what the cover looks like right there for any of you who don't have it. And I read that long before I came to Keller Williams. It's really a blueprint to how to do real estate.
So I just started following things in it, and it talked about farming, and that made sense and aligned with my life. Like, we always work where we live. And so I just said, okay, let's farm. And I had a lot of real estate agents tell me like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. That you're going to get pigeonholed. You're not going to get enough business in that very small geographic area. Like, don't do it. And I looked at their business, and some of them were great agents. And then I looked at Gary Keller, and I was like, who am I going to follow? We're going to go with Gary. And it may be wrong, but I'm willing to take the bet over here. And so what I did was I took my first closing, which, by the way, got my license in May of 2009, had my first closing in June of 2009. Wow. And I never had a month after that I did not have a closing. I very quickly got to 2 a month because I was just hustling. I could out hustle everybody.
How did you get that first deal, though?
So funny, it was not my friend's house that was the first deal. That was my second month's closing. The first one I did, I threw a launch party, because coming from film, that's what you do when you finish your film, you have a launch party. So I had a launch party for my new real estate business, called everybody that I knew. And in those calls, somebody said, oh, my son, is about to start looking for a house. And so he was my first deal. He literally wrote a new construction that was already built and sitting there ready and closed within 30 days of me getting licensed.
In 2009?
Yeah.
When it felt like, if you were doing real estate at the time, at least in Seattle, it felt like literally nothing was being bought or sold. There was like a 6-month period there where I swear to you, like there was no real estate happening. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So that first closing, we had no money. Like, I needed every penny of that $120,000 closing. So Joshua and I, my husband, we sat down and we said, okay, how much can we give towards building the business? And it was 5%. And I said, all right, 5% will go towards farming, and my efforts in becoming a local expert in an area that I wanted to work. And we'll talk about, I got super lucky. I didn't know how to do the math on farming, and I got lucky and picked a good neighborhood, but we'll talk about how to actually pick a good one.
So is that like $150? Did I just do math in my head?
So it would be, let's see, 4,500. It was more than that.
Math wrong.
Here's the math that I do know. I could mail postcards to 8 people for an entire year with that. And that's how I started my farm, was 8 people on one street. It wasn't even a whole street. It was part of a street. And that's how I started farming.
Okay, hold on. I'm getting my calculator out. So here's okay. So that's 96 postcards, because it's 8 people times 12 months.
Oh, so yeah, it is about $45.
Or it was like 150, I think.
Yeah.
I think in my little VD brain, that was my math. But here's what I think is a huge takeaway that I want everyone to really absorb, Tiffany. I know you're going to go into it later, but what you said is, I have enough money for 96 mailings. And instead of saying I'm going to mail to 96 people once, what you said is, I'm going to budget for the number of people I can afford to mail to 12 times a year. So instead of picking 96 people, you chose 8 people, because the money worked out to be 8 times 12.
Yeah. So
that's a huge takeaway. I just want to be sure that everyone really, really absorbs that. All right, let's keep going.
So every month I would grow my database of farming, so that, because the next commission was a little bit higher. It was a $200,000 deal, and I got to add, 20 people to the farm, and did that every month and steadily grew. And
by the way, I think that's
I got
100.
You're such a realtor. You can do the commission so fast.
Let me just check my math, but yeah. All right, never mind. Keep going.
So I grew very slowly by that. And then within 6 months, we'll talk about my plan, but these people saw me, they heard from me, and then they saw me on their doorstep. And when there's only 8 of them, they see me a lot. I wasn't there every week, but I was there pretty consistently. And then I grew to 20. Okay, I can still manage these number of people. And every commission, I added that 5% and added that 5%. And it took 6 months for me to get my first piece of business from the farm. But the thing I love about farming is you're building up mind share with people, so that in a moment when your world collapses, you actually have a business that keeps functioning. So when I got my first piece of farm business that I had never met before, they called me from saying, "You're the Creve Hall expert." I was living in Texas because my husband, it's a long story, but he's an only child, and his father passed away completely unexpectedly, who was unmarried and had a ranch of horses and a business restaurant that he ran all by himself. And so we had to move so that the horses could eat, and so that the restaurant would stay open and all of that staff would stay employed. So we actually moved to Texas, and I was in boots, having just fed all of these horses, and my cell phone rings, and they're like, "We know you're the expert in the neighborhood. We want you to sell our house." And I'm like, okay, I got to get back to Nashville, and I've got to sell this house. And I had done nothing right then to earn that business, but because I had been so consistent with them, they called me. And that's what happens with farming, is it becomes an input of business. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily create business tomorrow for you, but it creates long-term business that you don't have to actively be working for when it comes.
Well, yeah, 100%. And so if I'm doing the math, so it's fascinating to me. So $150 and that's 8 people. And then you do 300. So now you've got, 16, 24 people, and then you start adding it up and adding it up. And we don't need to get into all the particulars. Suffice it to say, I'm guessing by now we're in the thousands. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah. Yeah. We mailed to almost about 4,500 people.
There you go.
And we changed. That first deal, I gave half my commission to the farming budget because that was found money from farming. And so I wanted to reinvest more of it back into that. And then later, as I could give more to it, I grew it to 2,000 in a couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay. Got it. And we're going to dive into exactly what you did, because I think it's really important to let everyone know it is not just about mailings. Oh, do you wish it was that simple, right? Oh, do you wish you could just passively mail and magic would happen? But it doesn't always happen that way, does it, to get an ROI? No. Okay. So now you have a thriving business in Nashville. You just said you've 4,500 people you're farming. Give or take, what does your business look like coming from that farm right now?
So we do 250 to 300,000 a year in commissions just simply from that farm. Wow,
that's amazing. And so from an ROI perspective, God, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And we spend $2,500 a month in the mailing. We door knock to them once or twice a year. And we basically add on farm participants to the events we do for our clients. So we don't even have any cost with that associated. So yeah, we don't quite make 10 times the money, but it's pretty close.
I was just doing math. So yeah, it's a really, really good ROI. Honestly, there's a lot of people doing Zillow and different lead sources, Tiffany, that are really happy with like a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 ROI. This is amazing. I will say, I bet you to truly get ROI, you'd have to add everything you've spent up till now, though.
Well,
is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. But if you'll let me share the screen.
Yeah.
Can y'all see that?
Yep.
So this is kind of the income that was produced through that farming efforts. So started with $0. Within my first year, I was up to 850 people. You can see that right there, and made about $50,000. So when I was mailing to 850 people, it was about 50 cents a postcard. So that's $425 a month. So that's whatever, $48,000, $50,000.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I broke even in my first year.
Mm-hmm.
No, 50,000. That's not right math.
Well,
4,000.
Yeah. If you spent how much a month? 480 a month?
Yeah.
That's about 6,000 a year or a little less.
So 6,000 a year turned into 50 in the first year.
Not quite 10-to-1, but pretty good.
Yeah. I continued mailing just to 850 people. And in 2011, that time on the task means I made, about 125,000.
And you didn't even increase the number. That's actually really fascinating.
Well, and that's because farming you've just got to start the clock. I had 6 months of nothing, and then everything starts working because they're familiar with you. They see you places and they get to know you and they feel like they really know you. And then you start increasing. And so then I increased to 1,300 and, made $200,000 that year. So this is kind of the trajectory of where my farm took us in GCI. And you can see one thing. Here's the other thing to notice. 2012 to 2013, I raised it to almost 5,000 people. And you notice my money did not go up much because, again, it's that time on task. And I'll tell you what happened here. I started mailing junk and I also stopped door knocking this year. And then we fixed it. And then the chart keeps going up. So yeah, your ROI, we had an ROI in the first year.
That's amazing. But not everybody does. And I think that's important to know.
For sure. If you start with 1,000 homes, you're not going to have an ROI in the first year because you can't be in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
When you start with 8 or 20 and you're up to, only 800 by the end, you're seeing 800, you're knocking on those doors once or twice a year, no problem. And so you can get faster results.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's kind of pace this out logically for everybody. Okay, so that's a super good background. You have convinced all of us, everybody needs to farm. So let's start with strategies, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Let's start with strategies. What are your top 3 strategies, not tactics right now, but strategies, a way to think, how to plan, what to do if someone's watching this thinking, I want to start farming just like Tiffany?
The first thing is you need to know how to pick a good neighborhood. You need to pick a good area or a good niche, if you want to do it that way, that is actually going to turn over, because no matter how good you are at marketing, no matter how likable you are and how much people like you, if they're not selling their house, you're not going to be the one to do it. So you've got to make sure the turnover rate is right. And do we want to get in? Do you want me to talk about that right now, what that is? Or is that
absolutely.
Okay. So turnover rate is how many houses sell. This is math. This is where people get scared. How many houses sell divided by how many houses in the neighborhood. So you're looking for a percentage, and different areas do different things. I say you always need to look in your MLS. Don't go to your tax records, because if they're selling it to their brother, or if they're not hiring a realtor, they're not going to hire you anyway. So look at how many listed properties sell in your area. Divide that by how many houses there are in that area, and that's your turnover rate. Even if you're going to start really small, don't do the math on 8 houses. Do the math on the whole neighborhood, and then it's a good, solid neighborhood, and then start finding your first street, or if you want to do the whole neighborhood at once, you can. So
yeah, and so the target turnover rate is what?
6% is your absolute minimum. And I broke that rule. I started a new farm thinking, I know what I'm doing. 5.8, that's good enough. That was a huge mistake. Do not break the rule. 6% or die. Just move on.
Okay. We don't want to die. No dying. So 6% minimum. And if that's true, if 5.8 versus 6 doesn't really cut it, might even want to think about 6.2%. That is sounding like 6 is right on the cusp. Am I hearing that right? Yeah,
it is. But I would do it if it was 6.0. You've got to have a line at some point. So I taught my farming class actually in Seattle, gosh, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And, somebody found a neighborhood that had a 13% turnover rate, which I have not seen since.
Wow.
Usually 6 to 8 is really great. If you have an 8% neighborhood, that is an amazing turnover rate. 13 was unheard of.
Do you also look for agent market share? Is it, in your opinion, let's say you found a neighborhood that was 6.5 or 7% turnover and it has a super dominant agent in there already. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, you have to consider that too. If one agent has 15% market share, they own the neighborhood. I know that feels like a small percentage, but the point at which I had 15% of the sales, the neighborhood thought I sold all the houses. They literally thought I did. So if one agent has more than 15%, or if 2 agents have more than 20, I also wouldn't touch it, because you're just in for a longer fight. Mm-hmm. You can displace somebody if they're not doing what they need to do, but you're just making your timeline of payoff longer. So you'd have to have a really compelling reason to do that.
Much more expensive. Tiffany, how far back do you go? So when you calculate your turnover rate, how do you do last 12 months, last 24 months, 36 months?
So it depends. Right now, where we are in the just real estate climate, I don't think you're getting a good idea right now. So I would actually go back 2 years, and then I may even go back, if the neighborhood's been around long enough, to 2011, and see what happens in a downturn in that neighborhood. If people stop moving up, or, just get a sampling. Data is only as good as the information that's put into the equation. And so if you just look at, 2018 or 2019, which were the peak, potentially the peak of the real estate market. You're not getting a good sample of like, are they just selling because they can make money, or does this neighborhood consistently turn over?
Yeah.
So I would take like this year, go back 3 years, go back 3 more years, and sample each one of those. Because you're about to make a huge investment of time and energy.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, Tiffany, you can make some logical conclusions. Like, I'm just going to use Seattle as an example, but we have some neighborhoods that feed directly into Microsoft. They're in our median household pricing. I can draw a logical conclusion that the market for them is not going to diminish over time, right? It's not, those are not neighborhoods that will get weaker because I can see other outside economic conditions, coming in, right?
Yeah.
Well, since we went right into tactics, let's keep going into tactics. I love that. So tell us another top tactic of farming that you want everyone to know.
Let's think. So picking the neighborhood is definitely one of the things. And then, they need to see you. So you need to be present in whatever neighborhood it is. You should not pick the neighborhood you live in just because you live in it. Again,
okay, I think people are going to freak out at that. I think that people are going to be shocked that you're saying that. I think people assume they almost have to live in the neighborhood they farm.
No.
Well,
you can farm. I mean, it's easier to farm the neighborhood you live in because you're already at all of these things. But the reality is, if you live in a neighborhood that has a 4% turnover rate, that does not make logical sense.
Yeah.
So you need to be seen in the neighborhood. So I started 2 farms at the beginning, and walk your dog, like drive to the other neighborhood and park, and then walk your dog through the neighborhood. Act like you live there. Go shop at the grocery stores where the people who live there are shopping, because the more they see your face, the faster your marketing works. Like, how you're winning is when people look at you like that in the grocery store or at the library. Like, I would have these people like keep looking at me, and it freaked me out at first because I didn't know that's what was happening.
Well, you're hot. Everyone looks at you that way, Tiffany.
Right. It is just me. I was so used to it.
Yeah.
But they feel like they know you. It's that look of like, how do I know you? And that's what you want, because then you get to have a conversation around real estate, because when they realize, oh, you're the realtor, then that's what your conversation is all about. Go to the library, like just go to the playground. You don't even have to have a kid. I didn't have a kid when I started farming. Walk your dog, read a book out at the park. Mm-hmm. Don't be creepy, but just be out, do the things that you would do anyway. Just insert yourself into this other geographic area where you want to be known.
That's great. What else do you do besides mailing, Tiffany? So we've talked about the mailer, we talked about targeting the right neighborhood, and we talked about all of this stuff like, walk your dog or whatever. What else have you done to be present in the neighborhood? I'm leading you down a garden path because there's something I want you to talk about. Hint.
Yeah, I was like, door knocking, I'm sure is what it is. So yeah, I door knocked every month. And I door knocked before I even had listings in the neighborhood, because
what did you say? Like, what was your purpose of door knocking then?
Yeah. I don't know what script it was, where I heard this, but I basically would show up, and say, hi, I'm Tiffany Fykes. I'm the Creve Hall real estate expert. And I just wanted to make sure that you had someone to ask your real estate questions to. Or I would say, do you have somebody to ask your real estate questions?
Well, let's role play. I don't know. No.
Oh, great. Well, here's the thing that you do now have somebody that you can ask your real estate questions to. If you're anything like me, I know that I always love to know what the house down the street from me sold for. So I'm going to come by every month. I will always have that information for you. Here's my, card and information. And if you ever see something and you have a question, let me know. But don't worry, you'll see me next month. So, so next time when somebody answers the door or you answer the door and ask you that question, you can say, yeah, you do. Do you have any real estate questions right now?
Yeah, well, like what would be a typical response? I don't even know how to role play because no one has ever knocked on my door and asked me that. I don't even know what the common objections would be.
I mean, somebody would say, oh, yeah, I've got a friend who's a realtor. And I'd be like, okay, great. Well, I am the expert in this neighborhood. And so if there's anything specific in this neighborhood that I can help you with, I'll be back next month. And I always, if I'm like you, I want to know what the neighbor's house sold for. So I'll always be bringing that information for you. Does that sound okay?
Sounds
Yes?
great. And you have a handout of like stats, neighborhood
Yeah.
stats with you that you're leaving.
Yep.
And then do you leave those?
When I say a handout, I mean, I had no money. I printed off an MLS sheet of whatever had just closed. I mean, it was ugly.
Yeah.
And it had circled what the price was that they sold for, and it had my contact information on it. And that was what I had.
Listen, Tiffany, sometimes I think that's better. I do a lot of email digital marketing, and I am more and more convinced that the less pretty emails get more opens because they look like they're manually generated. They don't look like they're mass, pretty and slick. So I actually think that that's okay. I mean, I'm also into brand and image, so I'm
it's a constant
thing. A battle.
But the reality is they're going to throw away whatever it is you've sent to them first.
100%.
And so don't spend too much time. Like if that's going to stop you from knocking on the door, don't spend any time on it. Make it pretty later. Like just get out there right now and have a conversation with them. Yeah. And the other thing that I'll say about door knocking, that first deal that called me and said, we know you're the neighborhood expert, they had never opened their door.
Oh, wow.
They were in my second group, my second month expansion. So they had seen me for 5 months knocking on their door, and they were in there. I could see her through the window, and she never opened the door for me. But that didn't matter because I left it, and that consistency, she knew who to call when the time was right for her.
Yeah, she felt comfortable. I think at that point, there's a psychological effect of this person has walked up my front entryway and been to my front door so many times that I'm comfortable with it. I don't think they're thinking that consciously, but I think that I feel safe with this person. I don't know them and I don't know anyone else. Might as well choose this person that I feel comfortable with. I always tell everybody, Tiffany, and this is like a DHB of mine. Our regulars know what that means. That means deeply held belief. So that's a via DHB is that sellers are risk averse. So real estate sellers, this is a lot of times it's their largest asset. They typically choose their listing agents by referral and by neighborhood experts. If I ever lose when I'm battling against other listing agents to get a listing, it's one of those two things. And the reason is that they've seen the proof of concept in front of their face. They've driven by Tiffany's signs or Irene's signs or all the people watching who are already farming. They feel super comfortable. They're like, look, this person has done so many homes in my neighborhood. I have faith and confidence and trust that they're going to sell my home. And same with a referral. They have a friend or trusted family member saying, hey, they sold my asset. I trusted them. You can trust them, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to beat. It is super hard to beat a neighborhood expert. Even if you have a really close friend or family, your biggest competition, like Tiffany will beat a lot of us even if we're really amazing at our listing presentation in her own farm. Just like, Irene, I'm guessing you beat most people in your own farm. And Irene Kajansky in Toronto is an amazing luxury agent. She's on this right now. I think, Irene, you said you had like 15% market share, really, really high market share. I can't remember what you said, but same thing, right? Same thing. You guys have just done a masterful job kind of dominating your farms. And I think it's really, really cool. All right.
One question we had about door knocking during COVID.
I have so many questions. So you go, keep talking.
Well, I'll hit COVID. So we stopped door knocking at the beginning of this, but we've started again because, and what we do is we knock and then we get way far away. I mean, almost like if they really just look, they can't even see us because we want them to be comfortable. But right now, man, people want to see people. Like people open their door now more than they did pre-COVID. So I think as long as you're masked and very far away from the door, more than 6 feet, we've found that people open their door more now. Here's another, you might say, controversial way to get people to open their door.
Oh, good. I love controversy on the Wednesday webinars. Makes me
good.
My ratings go up.
I can definitely provide that. Men holding or carrying a baby will get their doors opened more. And so what we did for a period of time on our team, somebody was having a baby or having babies. And so nap time, we would let somebody carry the sleeping baby to go door knocking. So our best door knocking hours for opens were 1 to 3 when the baby was sleeping on somebody we trusted on our team who went door knocking.
We need to pause a moment. That is one of my favorite sales stories ever. That you guys use babies as basically clickbait. You use babies as like oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's amazing. But men, not women.
We didn't see a huge increase of women because I think people are more afraid to open the door to a man. Maybe, they're less afraid of a woman.
That is
I don't know.
Fascinating. Oh, someone's asking, Lindsay, really good question. What about bringing your dog with you to door knock?
I've never tried that, but there's too many people who are actually afraid of dogs.
I know. That
I think that may have the reverse effect.
I think so too. I feel the same way. I think it makes me a little nervous, Yeah. Okay. So you're still doing it during COVID. I think you answered one of my other questions, which is you have team members do it too, right? So it's not just you.
Now I can't.
It's different. I mean, like, what do they say?
Well, and one of the things, the script that I gave you, that was like my first few months when I had no listings. Then once you have listings, you start talking about those. I don't know if you saw the house I sold down the street. You start using that kind of language, or we sold down the street. But the next tactic that we'll probably talk about is like, you want to be an asset to this neighborhood. Like, you want to be providing things for them. And so now we've hit that 20% market share, which is crazy. I never knew that 20% it sounds like so low, but it's really a huge percentage of the market.
Sounds high to me, but that's because of the world I'm in. 20% is amazing market share.
So once we've hit that, we no longer have to talk about it. Our signs talk about it. The neighbors talk about it. So now all we talk about is what we can do for them. So we do events. We do something called a neighborhood tool shed, which is a really cheap idea. I took it from the concept of, other people have it for their database or their past clients. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this for the neighborhood. What are the things that nobody should own because they use them once or twice a year? And a leaf blower, because we have all of these huge trees in this neighborhood, a pressure washer, an extension ladder, and a pickup truck is what I came up with as 4 things. So I put together a tool shed, and I did this 2 years into farming, I created this. I didn't own a pressure washer. I did not own a leaf blower, but I was committed to buying one if somebody needed it. So I made a flyer, and that's what we door knocked for. We said, have you heard about the Fykes tool shed? And everybody on our team did that. If you need a pickup truck, if you need a ladder, if you need a pressure washer, you call the Fykes, and you can use the Creve Hall tool shed that they've provided. I got to door knock on that like probably 6 months before someone actually needed the pressure washer, and I had to go buy it. People were talking, like somebody on Nextdoor would be like, does anybody have a pressure washer? Other neighbors would be like, have you called Fykes? Because they've got a pressure washer.
That's so smart.
Getting all this word of mouth before I even had to invest the $500 for the pressure washer. So, you're always looking for problems you can solve for people. And that was one that I saw.
I mean, that's amazing. It reminds me of Russell Rhodes used to have a big thing for his database. We had like the slushy machines for parties.
The margarita machine.
That you didn't want to own because they took up a lot of space, but like once or twice a year, you would love to have one. I think those are his most popular item. Or like outdoor heaters. They have like the patio and deck heaters, things that you don't need all the time, but when you want them, you want them.
Yeah.
So smart. I love that. What other events do you guys do, Tiffany?
So the other thing that we did that costs $0 is something I called Drinks in the Driveway. So I basically created this event that's a BYOB hangout in your driveway. Pre-COVID. This is like 2012 when I started this. And my idea was just to get more neighborhood involvement and to up. This was a neighborhood that had mostly old people in it, but it was getting kind of revived. And I needed the young people to know there were other young people. And so like, come out and let's be friends. We can be a great neighborhood. And so it's hosted in one driveway. I hosted it in mine because I do live in this neighborhood to start. And I just invited everybody, said, bring whatever you want to drink. I was pregnant at the time. So like I had a jug full of water. And that was it. And you would invite your neighbors, and it's turned into this huge neighborhood thing. We now have 3 driveways that people fight to participate in. They come to my office, they pick up my signs, they put them in their yard and out in the neighborhood to advertise the Drinks in the Driveway event. Then they bring their signs back to my house and they host the event 100%.
You could totally do that for COVID right now. That's
for sure.
That's actually a super smart COVID event.
No, totally. Yeah. It's like what we're doing during COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can absolutely do this one in COVID time.
So I love that. I've seen a couple questions come up, and that is, can you talk a little bit more about your mailers? What are you actually mailing? What does that typically look like?
Okay. So I started, I'm going to walk you through the progression of what we did. So let me get my camera changed out. So, I mean, this is what I mailed. This is my very first, not my very first postcard, but this is what it looked like. You can tell because it's such a horrible headshot. But I mean, it was a just sold, and the camera is a little bit, let me see if I go down at all. If it, it shows that it's sold, it's got the address. And here's the trick. This isn't even a house in the neighborhood. It just looks like a house in the neighborhood. And so, but I've got the address because I've got high integrity. So I'm not trying to tell them it's a house in their neighborhood. If they know all the streets, they'll know that's not in their neighborhood, but they're not going to. They're just going to look at that house and they think, oh, Tiffany, at that point I was FYK group, sells in my neighborhood. Interesting. And so then still sending this tiny postcard. I mean, look at the size of my hand. I've got a little hand. Like, it's a baby postcard. But it's what I could afford. It was 50 cents. And so, and this is probably 2 or 3 years. You notice how like consistent that is?
Yeah.
It looks exactly the same, better headshot. But it was the same postcard almost every month. It looked the same. It just had a different house. And the backs were literally the same. Just the headshot changed. And then EDDM came out, which here, let me tell you really quickly about EDDM. So there's the best thing the post office has done in the last 5 years, maybe 10, I don't know. We can all get behind every door direct marketing. It is a way that you can mail to a geographic area or a postal route for so much cheaper. So I was able to, for the same money, start sending this postcard. So you see the difference in size?
That's a bigger size.
Yeah, so much bigger. So I could include more houses, I could include more information, but it's still pretty consistent to how these things looked. Because here's the reality, guys. They're doing this to their mail, and that's how long you have to make an impression on somebody. How long does it take them to flip through? And so I just want to make sure that every time they get this piece of mail from me, they know it's from me, they know it's real estate, and if they're interested, they know how to find us. And that's what we mailed for a very long time.
Okay. What does it look like now?
So now I upped my spending. I actually, because I went to 4,000 homes, I print everything in bulk, and I've got a whole page. And this one is our specific COVID, so it's not as pretty, but I said, here's things we'll offer you. Like, here's some things that we can do. And here's what's happening in your neighborhood. Here's what's happening to the prices, because that goes up every month. And, call to action on the front. And then this is what it's always looks like on the back. So, And usually this has houses on it. It's got a list of all the addresses, but this is my COVID mailing that I'm sending right now.
So someone's asking, Tiffany, how do you handle requests from selected homeowners to stop receiving your mailers when you're using EDDM?
I so love that question. I probably get 2 calls a year. Actually, one of my great friends in the neighborhood, we met when he called to yell at me about that. So I tell them that I so appreciate, because usually they recycle, or, you know, whatever. It's a whatever that
environmental request.
Yeah, thank you. Environmental reason. And so I say, I so appreciate that. I wish there was a way to do this. Here's the thing. Most people hate the post office. So you can just go after the post office, even though we love EDDM. I'm so sorry. The way the post office has this kind of mailing set up, I can't opt out anyone. And I know that is so frustrating, but I'll come to your house and pick it up for you every month if that will help you and ensure that it gets recycled, to take that off your plate. They usually laugh at that. They never imagined that I would offer to come to their house. Like, they just they cannot believe that that's what I'm saying to them.
Has anyone taken you up on that?
No, but I would gladly do it. I have had someone complain when we left a flyer on their door that it made them look like they weren't home or whatever. And I said, I'm coming right now. Like, I'm coming to your house and I will take that down. And they're like, no. I was like, absolutely. If you are uncomfortable in any way, I'm coming to your house. My office is right around the corner. You know that. I'll be there in 5 minutes. No. I insist. If I made you uncomfortable in any way, I have to make that right. And I went to her house and I took down the flyer. So
that's great. I love that. Okay. So kind of wrapping up door knocking, you do it, your team does it. We hold babies that are sleeping during nap time as a prop.
It's a win-win. The baby loves it.
It's so good. I can't even tell you how good that is. During COVID, we step way back, right? Not everybody answers, but you are consistent nonetheless. You keep doing it over and over. Layered on top of that, you're doing very, very consistent mailings over like 8 years now, EDDM mailings, which are great. I agree. I'm trying to think, what else have I missed? We've chosen the right neighborhood, Tiffany, because we have a 6+% turnover rate, right? Really, really important.
We're there, we're being seen by them.
I know what else I want you to talk about. I want you to share with everybody, because I think it was really wise what you said to me yesterday about the time clock.
Oh yeah. So like I showed you in the chart, like if you are committed to farming, if you're considering it, don't start, because you're just throwing away money. If you stop before a year, you might as well just tear the money up that you're spending. It's a waste. But you need to start immediately. The second that you decide you are farming, just do it. Mail something, write them a letter, like get your postcard going. And I mean, I bought that design on Etsy that I've used for 5 years. Just get something out there and start doing it consistently, because you just need to run the clock. They're going to throw it away most of the time. So just get it out there. Go door knock and be silly and be ridiculous and don't know what to say, and just start getting comfortable doing it. Because your skill is not, like, you can get business immediately from farming. You absolutely can. You door knock the right door at the right time and you will get business. But it's the consistency that is where you win. And so just start running the clock once you've committed to doing it. And one other thing that I say about farming is get a buddy. Get a farming buddy. Because when you start investing this money and this time, in 6 months, if you don't have a deal, which it's very rare to have a deal in 6 months, a year is how long you really need to commit to doing this before you see any results. You want to stop. You want to stop writing that check for the mailings you want to stop going and knocking on that door that I can see her in there and she never opens. Like, you just want to stop because it is hard to keep working with no results. And so find somebody else on this call and be accountability partners, because I started a second farm and I was already teaching this. I already had wild success in my first farm. And literally to the day almost of 6 months, I told Joshua, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is not working. And he was like, are you listening to yourself? Like, you literally teach this and say this exact thing to them that it's going to happen, and you want to stop? Like, and it's real. You just, man, writing a check every month that you don't see a return for is so hard. And so find somebody else to like skip along beside you and be like, we're doing this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And I think what's great about it is, as far as like starting the time clock now, we all know the math now. The math is, if postcards are $1 in a mail and you have $12, that's one person. That's not 12 people. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from you, Tiffany, that we budget for a year. So whatever money you have that, you're kind of layering on top of each other, it's divided into 12. That's how many people you can afford to farm to. I think that right there is super huge. We have a ton of audience questions, so I'm going to kind of start moving through them. Can you just list again what's in your tool shed?
Yes. Right now, it is a pickup truck, a extension ladder, which some people's insurance will not let them lend an extension ladder, so always talk to your insurance, a pressure washer, and a leaf blower, a real high-powered one, because this specific neighborhood has a ton of leaves in the fall.
But like in some areas, it might be a snow plow or a snow shovel. I mean, like this, or a snow blower. I mean, like, I think that's also a geographic thing too, right?
For sure. What you need to think in this neighborhood, what do they need?
Yeah. Okay. And then you already shared your recent postcard. So Zach Perkins wanted you to share it again. Zach, this is going to stay on the Pivot Shift Ahead page, so you can just rewatch it, no problem. And all of her postcards, she shared her absolute most recent one, so it's all on there. Stephanie Cathcart had a really good question. She said, "What do you say if they ask if you live in the neighborhood you're farming?"
I have never been asked that. I'm trying to think. They definitely won't ask you that when you're door knocking. Most people don't ask it in a listing appointment either. They assume, because all you're doing is you're saying that, like, I'm the neighborhood expert. Hi, I'm Tiffany Fykes. I'm the Creve Hall expert. What questions do you have? I think living in the neighborhood is only a thing that you pull out if it's true, and you use it to win.
Yeah.
If you need to.
Right. That's right.
But I don't think I've ever been asked if I live in the neighborhood. Usually, actually, when I tell them, they're like, "Oh, really? You live here? Great."
Yeah, I'm just looking at all the questions right now. Okay, we got that. Rhonda Smith, how do you know which houses to select? So Rhonda, when you watch the replay, you can go back and we talk about how to look for a neighborhood and how to calculate turnover rate. So it's right there. So if you can afford, 100 mailings, say, right? If you could say you have, I don't know, however much that's going to be.
$1,200.
Yeah, $1,200. Thank you. If you can afford that, then, then broaden your scope to, I think a zip code's too big, but just to draw a map on your MLS and just start playing around with different neighborhoods and kind of calculating turnover rate. And, you can kind of start figuring out from there. I would actually say that you want to choose the neighborhood that you ultimately want to dominate as a whole, even if you can only afford to market to 100 of them. And then you're just going to start choosing which 100. And by the way,
you will want to do it per postal route, because that's how EDDM works. So you pick your big neighborhood and then you figure out, okay, 100 homes, is that a postal route? And basically let the post office decide who you mail to, because it doesn't matter within your neighborhood. You just need to get started.
That's great. I didn't even think about that. That's really, really smart. And, I just want to put a little plug in here. We have a lot of new construction real estate agents that come to our brokerages. So I help lead 8 brokerages here in Western Washington. So I'm actively involved in recruiting a lot. and I meet with a lot of new construction agents. If you have sold new construction, you are a prime candidate for farming. You probably know almost every homeowner. My husband sold a neighborhood out over like 3 or 4 years, literally can tell you every single house, every single homeowner. He's been inside like every single house in that neighborhood, right? So if you did new construction, even if it was a long time ago, you're absolutely a fantastic candidate to farm. Like, I'm a big believer in this. In 2 weeks, next week, I'm going to have Kenny Klaus on, by the way. I didn't say that earlier. In 2 weeks, I'm going to have someone on who did that. She sold out condos in downtown Minneapolis. And then after a few years, she went out, came to Keller Williams, right? And opened a little storefront. And all of her business is concentrated in this like 3-block area. She's a huge, massive business concentrated in all of the condo complexes that she sold. So I thought I'd throw that out there.
There's a good question from Jenna, which lived near Creve Hall, which I love that you know where that is. So no solicitation signs and HOAs with restrictions. That's a really great question. You need to talk to your broker about that in terms of what does that look like. Now, we are not soliciting when we are offering our like tool shed. In my opinion, my broker is of the opinion that we are not soliciting when we are offering free services. So I door knock and until I'm asked to leave. And then if I'm asked to leave, I leave. And we do keep a list of do not knock on our, like in our farm. We know who are the night workers who we have woken up during the day. So we do keep a list of do not knock. If somebody says, I never want to see you again, then we just wait until they sell their house with us. We've had that happen before.
That's funny.
And then we'll start knocking and they'll go back on the list. But I do respect it when someone tells me stop. So.
I love that. Okay. I'm not sure I understand this question. Oh, okay. Okay. So can you describe the signs that they come and pick up for their drinks in the driveway? What are on those signs? Are they your regular open house signs or are they different?
No, they are a drinks in the driveway branded with us. So it's got our logo on it. It doesn't have a phone number or anything like that, but that doesn't matter. It's just, you just want those eyeballs on your brand as much as possible. So each house gets 2 or 3 pointers depending on where they are in the neighborhood, because this neighborhood has like one road that's pretty right down the middle. So how many turns to the main road? And then they have a sign, a bigger sign, almost like an open house sign in their front yard that says driveway open. I think we do 5 to 7 or 5:30 to 7:30. And so that's what they get.
That's awesome. All right. That's awesome. I think we captured most of the questions. If we didn't, Tiffany and I will both do our best to hop onto Facebook today or tomorrow and answer your questions, or you can always email us. Tiffany Fykes, thank you so much for taking out the time from your business, from your awesome husband and amazing kids. We so appreciate you and what you had to share with us today. Next Wednesday, I want to invite you to join me as I interview Kenny Klaus. Kenny Klaus famously was a UPS driver in Phoenix, Arizona. Who better to have a huge farm route, like literally route. That's why we've used them, like a route. Is it route or route? I say route.
Route.
Does that mean I'm quasi-Canadian? I don't know. So he's going to come on next week, and he's got a really massive farm business, and we're going to walk through this with him. Cynthia Freud is in 2 weeks, and she's the one I was talking to you guys about, who's in downtown Minneapolis, who was a new construction salesperson and sold out all of these condos and then started farming the condos. And I think her message, I think the coolest thing about Cynthia's business is that's really how you go small to go big. And I think the same thing with you, Tiffany. You guys took a small geographic area, right, and poured your resources into that to grow a big business. And then you can duplicate it down the road if you choose to, right? So if you chose to expand, or Cynthia chose to expand, you could just take that method and over the next few years do it somewhere else. So really, really grateful. Thank you to all of our regulars always for coming on. I hope you guys learned something today, and always a big thanks to the Pivot Shift Ahead page for allowing us to live cast on their page. We really appreciate them. All right, guys, go and have a great rest of your week. And I love it when you answer my emails and we get to talk a little bit on email. So don't be shy. Talk to you later. Bye.